Robert got a race to the South Pole. The first person to reach the South Pole was Rolf Amundsen, a Norwegian Robert Scott who was English, arrived at the South Pole. A month later, Amundsen and died on the return journey to his ships. Yesterday enough Scott became the hero, but Amundsen did not. Captain Robert Scott, 1868 1912, was an officer in the English Navy from 1901 to 1904. He led an expedition to Antarctica for a British scientific organization called the Royal Geographical Society. His group traveled farther south than anyone else had ever done. He gathered information on rocks, weather, and climate, and he made a map when he returned to England. He was a national hero. A few years later, Scott decided to organize another expedition. He said that he wanted to make a complete scientific study of Antarctica, but his real goal was to be the first person at the South Pole. He took 3 doctors, several scientists, and a number of other men with him. Scott groups saw on the ships named the Terra Navas that Amundsen was also on his way to be poles. Amundsen and Scott were very different from each other, and they made very different plans. Amundsen planned everything very carefully. He took sled and dog team, and the great Arctic explorer did not. Scott took pony, a small house, and a few dogs. But his plan to have his men pull the sled themselves for most of the trip. On the earlier expeditions, as some dogs became weak, the men killed them for food for themselves and the other dogs. Amundsen did do too, and it helped him reach the pole. But later, people called him dog eaters. Scott would not eat his dog, and this was not the reason they died on the expedition. There were other differences between the two expeditions. Amundsen saw 100 kilometers closer to the pole than Scott did. Scott also had the bad luck of having extremely bad weather days, a blizzard and strong wind. It was often 40 minus degrees Celsius. Scott and his men built bus camps near the ocean, ate and spent the winter there. They used sled and ponies to carry a ton of supply further inland to a place that they named the Wonton Deposit. When the spearings came up, shoes of the men start to ahead of the others with motorized sled to lift supply along the way. However, after only a few days, the motorized sled broke down, and the men had to pull them A few days later, Scott started for the South Pole with a few men. The whole journey was very difficult. Scott and his men either walked through deep snow or ski over ice and uneven ground. The climate was too difficult for the pony and they all died. There were frequent snowstorms. Sometimes the men couldn't leave their tent for several days because of the blizzards. When Scott was 260 kilometers from the poles, he sent all but 4 men back to the base camp. This was probably his most serious mistake. His tent was big enough for only 4 people and he had only enough food and fuel for us. Somehow, he had to provide for the people plus himself. Also, one man had left his ski behind with some of the supplies. He had to walk into the snow, and this slowed down the whole growth. On January 17, 1912, Scott and his men reached to the pole, only to find the tent and the Norwegian flags. They were not the first people to reach the South Pole. They had lost the rest. The next day, they started the 1,300-kilometer journey back to their house camp. Was worse than the trips to the pole. They became weak from hunger at times. The witness reviews made them blind. Their finger and eye tools began to breathe, and 2,000 men fell and injured themselves. They didn't have enough fuel to keep warm in their tent. They became exhausted and had more and more difficult to pull their sled. Finally, one man died. Then others became too weak, and that he knew he was endangering the lives of the others one night. He left the tent and never returned. He walked out into the blizzard to die, instead of the holding back to the other 3. Every day, Scott described the terrible journeys into his day. On March 21, the 3 remaining men were only 20 kilometers from the one. Tony put, but another blizzard kept them in their tent. On March 29, they were still unable to leave their tent. On that day, Scott wrote his last word in diary. A search party found the 3 bodies each. Month later, they also found Scott, a diary excellent, photographs of the expedition, and a letter to take back to England. The search parties left their frozen bodies where they found them. Today, the house camp building still there. Inside are supply furniture and the main belongings. They have been left just the way they were when Scout expedition was there. New Zealand took care of the building and content. Robert Scott's name lives on in the story of his trip to the Antarctica, the last part of the earth that peoples explore. He was not the first to reach the South Pole, but he is remembered as one of the great heroes of exploration.